the girl who lost her name. The night was quiet in the city of dreams, yet a storm raged inside a little girl's heart. Her name was Amira, a child of laughter, hope, and innocence. But fate can be cruel. One dark evening, her family's home echoed with screams and betrayal. A trusted man, her father's own companion, sold her like a secret. She was just a child, and yet the world treated her as something to be traded. When the carriage stopped, her new life began, not as Amira, the daughter of a poet, but as a nameless girl in a strange, glittering mansion. The scent of roses could not hide the scent of sorrow. She didn't know it then, but that night would erase everything she once was. The stars above seemed too far to hear her cries. That was the night Amira's destiny changed. The night innocence was replaced by silence. The House of Shadows. They called it the House of Grace, but to Amira, it felt like a cage wrapped in silk. The woman who ruled it, Madame Noor, spoke gently but carried eyes sharp as glass. She wasn't cruel, she was business. She taught the girls how to smile when they wanted to scream, how to dance when their hearts were breaking. Amira learned fast. Her small hands moved like poetry. Her eyes learned to lie beautifully. Night after night, she watched the world from behind curtains. Noblemen, poets, and dreamers came and went. She became what they wanted to see, a mystery wrapped in grace. Yet deep inside, the little girl from that dark night still whispered, "I want to go home." But no one ever returned from the House of Shadows, becoming the enchantress. Years passed, and the child became a woman the city could not stop whispering about. Amira, now known as the Jewel of the Night, was both admired and misunderstood. Her beauty was her power, and her curse. When she sang, silence filled the hall. When she danced, time seemed to slow. But every movement carried a story of pain hidden behind elegance. She had learned one thing, that people fall in love with illusions. The noblemen who came to see her never wanted to know the woman behind the smile. They wanted the fantasy. And so she gave them one. Every gesture was a performance, every glance a secret she'd never tell. But when the lights faded and the music died, Amira sat by the window, staring at a sky she couldn't reach. The city adored her, but the girl inside her longed to disappear. The man who saw her soul. Then came Lord Rahim, different from the rest. He didn't see Amira the enchantress. He saw the broken girl hiding beneath the silk. When he spoke to her, he didn't use her stage name. He called her Amira, her real name, the one she thought she'd lost forever. For the first time, she felt seen. He listened to her stories, the way a poet listens to the wind. He didn't promise love. He offered understanding. And that was more dangerous than any promise. Because for someone who has been unseen all her life, being truly seen is terrifying. For a while, Amira believed that maybe fate had softened. But in this city, love was not freedom. It was just another cage made of gold. The fall and the farewell. Rumors travel faster than love. When the city learned about Amira and Lord Rahim, judgment followed. He was a nobleman. She was a courtesan. Their worlds were never meant to meet. Under pressure he left, quietly, like dawn leaving the night behind. Amira didn't cry that night. She danced. Every step was pain turned into beauty. Every tear became rhythm. And as the candles burned low, she realized something. She was no longer the girl who waited to be saved. She was her own salvation. When the music stopped, she looked at her reflection, not the performer, not the enchantress, but the woman who had survived it all. The world might remember her for her beauty, but she would remember herself for her strength. The return of the past. Years drifted like fallen petals in the wind. Amira had grown into a legend, a woman people spoke of in whispers and songs. But even legends get tired. One evening, after a long performance, she saw a face she could never forget. Rahil, the man who had once stolen her childhood. His eyes were older now, filled with guilt. Time had punished him, but not enough. Amira stood still, her heartbeat slow but steady. He begged for forgiveness, his voice trembling. But forgiveness is not always mercy. Sometimes it's release. She looked at him and said softly, "You didn't ruin me. You created me." Then she turned and walked away, leaving him in silence. That moment wasn't revenge, it was freedom. For the first time, she felt the past fade like a ghost at sunrise. The road back home. Fame had given Amira everything except peace. One night, as the city lights flickered like fading stars, she packed her few belongings and left the house of grace forever. The road was long, and her carriage rolled through towns that didn't remember her. But when she reached the dusty streets of her old home, something inside her broke and healed at once. Her childhood house still stood, smaller than she remembered, quieter than her dreams. She stood at the gate, afraid to knock. Would they recognize her? Would they even want to? Her heart pounded like a drum of memories. When the door opened, an old woman gasped. "Amira?" she whispered. The years melted away. The daughter who had been lost to the world had finally found her way back, not as a child, but as a story reborn. The weight of memory. The house smelled of earth and rain, the same way it had before her world shattered. Amira walked through each room like a traveler through her own past. She saw her father's books, her mother's embroidery, and the broken swing where she once laughed. Everything was the same, and yet she was not. That night, she sat near the old window and listened to the wind whisper through the trees. She realized that time doesn't heal wounds, it just teaches you how to live with them. Her family didn't ask her what she had endured. They saw the sadness in her eyes and chose silence over judgment. That silence was love, quiet, unconditional, and real. For the first time, Amira slept without fear. The woman and the mirror. Morning came softly. The city outside woke with the call of prayer and life, but Amira stayed still, facing the mirror. The reflection staring back was no longer the courtesan, no longer the dancer or the lost child. She was something else, a survivor who had lived every version of womanhood the world could offer, the innocent, the sinner, the lover, the forgotten, and finally, the free. She smiled at her reflection. Her scars were invisible to others, but to her, they were proof of existence. Every tear had built her strength. Every betrayal had shaped her grace. She whispered to herself, "They took my name once. Now I own it." The last dance. On her final night in the city of dreams, Amira returned to the old stage one last time, not for fame, not for the audience, but for closure. The lights dimmed, the music began, and she moved like the wind itself, graceful, unbroken, eternal. People wept, not knowing they were witnessing her goodbye. When the last note faded, she bowed deeply. The applause roared like thunder, but she didn't hear it. In her heart, she was already somewhere else, free, peaceful, and whole. She walked off the stage, not as Amira the courtesan, but as Amira the legend. Her story wasn't about sorrow anymore. It was about rebirth, about a woman who lost everything and still found herself. The silence after stardom. After leaving the stage behind, Amira disappeared quietly from the city that once chanted her name. Some said she went to the mountains. Others said she became a teacher, helping girls who had lost their way. The truth was simpler. She just wanted peace. The world that once celebrated her never truly knew her, and she no longer needed it to. Every morning, she walked through the village streets wrapped in a shawl of calmness. No jewels, no music, no spotlight, only the sound of her footsteps and the whisper of memory. For the first time, she lived not to perform, but to breathe. The woman who once danced for the world now danced with life itself, quietly, freely, completely. The seeds of wisdom. With time, people began to find her again, young women with trembling voices, girls who had lost their dreams. They came not to see Amira the legend, but to seek Amira the guide. She told them stories, not of glamour, but of truth. She taught them that beauty fades, applause dies, but dignity lives forever. When one girl asked her, "How did you survive all of it?" Amira smiled softly and replied, "By learning that love is not something you beg for. It's something you become." Those words traveled like light through the hearts of many. She had once been a symbol of desire. Now she became a symbol of strength. The ghosts of yesterday. Sometimes, late at night, the ghosts of her past still visited, the music, the lights, the faces that once surrounded her. But she didn't fear them anymore. She welcomed them like old friends who had lost their power. She realized that pain never truly disappears. It just changes shape. The same fire that once burned her now warmed her. She forgave the world, and more importantly, she forgave herself. That was the final freedom she had been searching for all her life. When she closed her eyes, she didn't see the courtesan or the child. She saw a woman who had lived, fallen, risen, and learned to love her own reflection. The legacy of light. Years later, when people spoke of Amira, they no longer whispered. They spoke her name with respect. Songs were written about her courage, poems about her eyes, and films about her journey. But the real legacy wasn't in the fame. It was in the countless hearts she had touched without even knowing. She had taught the world that a woman's worth could never be measured by her past, only by the strength it took to survive it. Amira had become more than a person. She had become a lesson, a reminder that broken things can still shine. The eternal grace. One quiet evening, as the sun melted into gold across the sky, Amira sat by her window, the same way she once did as a child. She looked at the fading light and whispered, "Now I am free." No one knows when she left this world. Some say she died peacefully in her sleep. Others say she simply vanished with the dawn. But those who believe in stories say that every time a dancer takes the stage with truth in her eyes, Amira's spirit dances with her, unseen, eternal, infinite, because legends don't end, they echo. And Amira's echo is the sound of freedom, wrapped in grace. She became her own story. There are women, like Amira, who walk through fire, not to burn, but to become light. The world tried to name her, to shame her, to break her, but she became her own story. She taught us that beauty is not perfection, it's survival. That freedom isn't about running away, it's about standing still and saying, "I am enough." And though her voice has faded into time, her spirit still dances in every woman who dares to rise, and in every heart brave enough to love what cannot be caged.